There is a universal law no one teaches you. Betrayal always gives a warning. The problem? Almost no one knows how to read the signs, until it's already too late. Today, Machiavelli speaks, and if you listen closely, you will never again be caught off guard by those already rehearsing how to betray you.
I always knew the traitor doesn't arrive. He is shaped in the court, among shadows, between measured words and new silences. Before the blow, there is rehearsal. Before betrayal, there are signs. Over time, I learned to read those signs like you read omens before a storm. And now, you can too. These are the 14 invisible signs that someone very close to you is no longer your ally. And even if they don't realize it yet, they've already started betraying you. I don't wait to be betrayed. I hear the sigh, as if the blade had already fallen. Sign 1, the new courtesy. The first sign is not conflict. It is courtesy. Not the usual kind, not the familiar protocol, but a new kind of courtesy. Forced, measured, slightly exaggerated. The traitor doesn't yell. He greets you with a smile he never used before. Says good morning with a softer tone. Listens more attentively, not because he cares, but because he's archiving. When someone who used to be natural starts acting like they're performing on stage, you're witnessing the rehearsal before the strike. I didn't learn this from books. I learned it from daggers. In Florence, a diplomat who had looked at me with disdain for years suddenly began praising my ideas in public meetings. The same man who once avoided my company sought it out. The same one who criticized my writings began quoting them. Less than a week later, I discovered he had written the letter that condemned me to exile. This new courtesy is emotional camouflage. The traitor knows he can't destroy you yet. So, for now, he seduces you. And while you lower your guard, he takes notes. What looked like manners was strategy. In today's world, this new courtesy appears when someone begins to overperform empathy, right when they have something to hide. At work, in friendships, or in relationships, that sudden change in tone, the exaggerated kindness, the extra attention, the strange interest in your ideas, is not always praise. Sometimes, it's how the wolf puts on the sheep's skin. Don't meet it with trust. Meet it with silence and vigilance. Sign 2, the emotional echo. There's a difference between remembering and repeating. A genuine ally responds with a live, spontaneous, and sincere emotion. But the emerging traitor? He repeats learned emotions. He imitates enthusiasm, copies sadness, fakes loyalty. And if you're paying attention, you'll notice their emotion arrives half a second too late. You share a victory, and they celebrate, right after everyone else. You express concern, and they mimic it, like someone replaying a reaction they once saw succeed. That's not connection, that's echo. And where there's echo, there's no sincere reflection, only construction. I learned this by watching foreign ambassadors. When one wanted to infiltrate a Florentine politician's trust, he didn't share emotions. He imitated them. For months, one of them began speaking with my same gestures, laughing with my same pauses, even walking like me. He claimed to admire me, but in his eyes there was no respect, only calculation. Weeks later, he was among those who signed the agreement leaking our most sensitive information to the enemy. He didn't fool me. I had already seen the echo. The traitor rehearses emotions he does not feel. He acts them like an actor. And if you stop just listening to the words and begin to observe the rhythm, the delay, the imitation, you'll know it. You're in front of an emotional imposter. Sign 3, the edited silence. I've always been fascinated not by what people say, but by what they don't. The traitor in the making doesn't start by lying out loud. At first, he simply omits. He doesn't deny the truth. He just walks around it. He tells you what happened, but avoids saying how he felt about it. He talks about future plans, but no longer includes you. He speaks of others, but no longer mentions your name. Betrayal begins in those small, surgical silences. Silences that don't sound awkward, but are too perfectly placed. When an ally begins turning into an enemy, their way of speaking changes in texture. They no longer stumble, no longer ramble. Now, they edit. And to edit is to choose which parts of the truth survive. In my time, I watched a Florentine advisor speak fluently on every matter, except when we mentioned a certain French nobleman. He would pause, lower his voice, jump to the next topic. I found out later. He had already taken the bribe. I knew it not by what he said, but by what he avoided. The traitor doesn't need to lie to your face. He just needs to skip the truth. If you pay close attention to what's missing in a conversation, if you detect the words someone used to say but now avoids, if you observe what they used to share and now hold back, you'll be watching the birth of a silent decision. Don't underestimate the power of silence. The traitor masters it better than anyone. And in that silence, the betrayal has already begun. Sign 4. The enthusiasm that no longer vibrates. There's a way to know when someone is beginning to disconnect from you. Their enthusiasm no longer vibrates. You won't notice it at first, because the words are the same. They still say, "That's great, I love it, brilliant idea." But the soul behind those words is no longer with you. A traitor doesn't start by denying you. He starts by emotionally detaching from your victories. When you achieve something important and his reaction is cold, automatic. When he smiles but his eyes don't light up, you're not looking at a tired friend. You're looking at someone who no longer feels part of your success. It happened to me with a trusted ally of the Signoria. For years, he celebrated each of my small achievements. One day, I published a crucial text. He smiled, said all the right things. But that night, he didn't drink with me, didn't toast, didn't mention the text again. 2 weeks later, he was in a different room, signing against my appointment. Genuine enthusiasm cannot be faked well, and when it disappears, it flickers like a light about to go out. Watch closely how someone reacts to your progress. If they no longer celebrate with you, it's because they no longer feel with you, and someone who no longer feels with you will soon stand against you. Sign 5. Strategic attention. The forming traitor begins to listen to you better, but not to understand you, to collect data. Before, they were distracted, spontaneous, forgetful. Now, they remember everything. They repeat your words. They ask questions that sound empathetic, but are calculated. Strategic attention is not kindness. It's ammunition gathering. The one who plans to betray you needs to know you well, because they'll use your blind spots as their entry point. I remember a young apprentice who had shown little interest in my texts, but in the final weeks before he betrayed me, he started asking about my ideas, my contacts, my methods, with a curiosity that felt like admiration. "Machiavelli," he said, "what would you do if you had to negotiate with someone more powerful? And how would you pressure an ally who stops responding?" These weren't questions. They were maps, and I was giving them away. Strategic attention is like a net thrown with kindness, but every one of your answers gets caught in it. If someone suddenly listens too closely, if your words seem to be mentally recorded, if their gaze shifts from emotional to analytical, you are not being appreciated. You are being scanned, and someone who scans you this carefully no longer sees you as an ally. They see you as a target. Sign 6. The sharpened praise. Praise, when sincere, nourishes, but when it's born from calculation, it disarms. The traitor, in their most dangerous phase, doesn't attack. They compliment you, but not just any compliment. They praise you exactly where you're most vulnerable to pride. They call you brilliant, right after an impulsive decision. They call you strong, exactly when they know you're doubting. They call you essential when they no longer consider you necessary. Sharpened praise doesn't aim to lift you up. It aims to make you relax, to make you lower your guard, to make you trust them, like you'd trust a mirror that only shows your best angle. I learned this during a negotiation with a Spanish emissary. For days, he criticized my methods. But the night before signing the agreement, his tone changed. Machiavelli. No one reads men like you. Only you could seal this deal masterfully. The next day, he presented a document with a hidden clause that would have destroyed Florence's position. That praise wasn't admiration. It was poison wrapped in silk. The traitor knows that a poorly trained ego is easy to lead. He just has to stroke it until it walks off the cliff on its own. So when the compliment comes right when you least expect it, when it sounds too grand for what you did, don't accept it blindly. Analyze it. Because if it doesn't come from respect, it comes from a plan. Sign 7. The pause in the gaze. There's a moment, barely perceptible, that reveals everything. The pause in the gaze. It's not avoidance. It's more sophisticated. A split second where someone's eyes stop on you. Just a bit too long. It's not affection, not admiration. It's calculation. The traitor, at some point in their transformation, starts seeing you not as an ally, but as a piece. And that shift shows in the eyes. I remember a papal official I used to share wine and strategy with. One day, during a casual conversation, I noticed his eyes paused on me. He wasn't listening. He was measuring, like someone studying a wall before climbing it, like someone analyzing a lock before breaking it. That pause, brief, cold, is the exact moment someone begins to see you as an obstacle. Not everyone can fake it with their eyes. Words can lie. The body can fake. But the eyes, for a second, forget the script. And if you learn to watch in that instant, if you detect the micro-freeze, the shift in focus, the breath that pauses before answering, you're not hearing opinions. You're witnessing the birth of a decision against you. The traitor doesn't need to speak. He just needs to look at you differently. And you must have the courage to notice that gaze before it's too late. Sign 8. The shift in pronouns. Betrayal doesn't always begin with a decision. Sometimes it begins with a pronoun. When someone who used to say we starts saying I, when they refer to them as if you're no longer included, that tiny shift in grammar is not an accident. It's a signal. The traitor, before creating physical distance, first creates linguistic distance. In the court of Florence, I saw this often. Loyal allies spoke of our plans, our reforms, our alliances. But when one of them started doubting, their tongue betrayed their heart. You all should consider, I have other plans. Not sure if that's best for you. Small shifts, micro fractures in a shared identity. And every time the pronouns drifted, the break came soon after. Because no one betrays from within the we. They first exit it, even if only in whispers. Listen carefully, not just to what they say, but how they name themselves. When an ally stops using the plural, when they start verbalizing separation before explaining it, when language no longer includes you, the betrayal is no longer in planning, it's in motion. Sign 9. The frictionless agreement. In politics, in war, and in life, disagreement among allies is a sign of health. Because where there's trust, there's space to disagree. But when someone suddenly agrees with everything you say, without nuance, without objections, without pause, you're not winning an argument. You're losing an ally. The traitor does not want conflict. He wants to hide inside your blindness. So he nods, praises you, tells you your plan is brilliant, even when he hasn't understood it. Or worse, when he knows it's doomed. I learned this one late. A young diplomat I used to clash with regularly. We always debated fiercely, and for that, I trusted him, because he said what he thought. But 1 month before disaster struck, he stopped arguing. He told me everything made sense, that he had nothing more to add. In my pride, I took it as respect. But he had already chosen another side. He didn't agree. He was done pretending to disagree. He had stopped playing. Frictionless agreement is not admiration. It's false surrender. It's the silence that comes right before the strike. So don't celebrate the one who always agrees with you. Distrust him. Because the ally who no longer debates is no longer with you. He's just waiting for the moment to stop pretending. Sign 10, the restless withdrawal. The traitor doesn't leave all at once. He withdraws slowly, but not with clarity, not with firmness. He does it with a kind of restlessness that looks like exhaustion, but it isn't. His presence becomes erratic. He no longer replies as quickly. He no longer shows up where he used to. He doesn't have time, but somehow he does for others. Ask him. He says he's fine. Press him. He blames work, stress, life. But if you look past the excuses, you'll see what I learned to detect in the halls of the Palazzo Vecchio. Restless withdrawal isn't guilt. It's internal conflict. Someone who knows they're walking away from a pact, but doesn't yet have the courage to fully break it. A Florentine nobleman avoided me for weeks. When I finally found him, he pretended everything was normal, but his voice was hollow. His eyes avoided mine, and at the end of every sentence, there was a silence that didn't belong to a tired friend, but to someone already mentally gone. Days later, he became a key witness in a false accusation against me. The traitor, when still undecided, becomes visibly uncomfortable in your presence. And that discomfort isn't sadness. It's the anticipation of betrayal. Watch those who used to be constant, but now float. Those who used to be firm, but now fade. The body of the traitor always starts to leave before the mouth admits it. And if you learn to recognize that unrest, you'll speak to him one last time, already knowing he won't be back. Sign 11. Praise for the enemy. There's something a forming traitor cannot resist. Sooner or later, he starts praising your enemy. He won't do it directly. He's not that foolish. But he lets subtle drops fall. Venom with a polite smile. Well, you have to admit he moves cleverly. In this, he may be right. I don't agree with him, but he has vision. What seems like impartiality is actually a rehearsal for justification. The traitor needs to convince himself that he's not acting out of betrayal, but out of logic, strategy, even admiration. I saw this again and again at court. When someone began speaking well of those they once detested, they weren't becoming objective. They were finding reasons to switch sides. A Florentine ambassador, loyal to our cause for years, began to casually mention the virtues of the Pope we opposed. He said it softly, between the lines, like political commentary. When I confronted him, he said he was simply being fair. A month later, he was secretly writing letters to Rome. The traitor must glorify the enemy to ease the guilt of betraying a friend. So watch carefully when someone who used to stand with you begins to put crowns on those they once criticized. That praise isn't respect. It's a bridge. And that bridge is already under construction. Sign 12, the excessive calm. There's a kind of calm that doesn't soothe, a serenity that doesn't bring peace, but calculation. The traitor, in the final phase of his transformation, is not agitated. He's calm, not with the world, but with his decision. While you're still trying to fix what you don't even know is broken, he's already smiling. He speaks slowly, chooses every word. He no longer gets upset. He no longer reacts. Because in his mind, the betrayal has already been decided. He's just waiting to execute. I saw it many times. Just before collapse, when dialogue was still possible, they no longer debated. When there was still hope, they were already mourning. For you, that calm is not control. It's emotional coldness perfected. And it's dangerous because it makes you believe everything is stable, but you're not facing a peaceful ally. You're facing someone who no longer feels obliged to protect the bond between you, and someone who no longer wants to save it, has already burned the bridge from the inside. If his voice is perfect, his tone flawless, his gaze steady, don't think you're earning respect. You're witnessing his internal goodbye. And excessive calm is the second to last stage of betrayal. The last is the strike. Sign 13, the flood of coincidences. When a traitor starts walking between two worlds, he begins showing up where he shouldn't, and knowing things he was never told. He bumps into your contacts. He hears of plans no one informed him of. He speaks to people who once avoided him, and now seek him out. You ask, "How did you know that?" He smiles. "Someone told me. I overheard it. Just coincidence." But coincidences, when repeated, stop being accidents and become geometry. The traitor begins walking in parallel lines with you, not to support you, but to anticipate you. He appears just before you make a decision. He calls before you do. He knows more than he should. I saw this more than once. When certain secrets ended up in enemy hands, always the same pattern emerged, repeated coincidence. And behind each one, there was a man who swore loyalty and had one foot already in the enemy's court. Betrayal doesn't always shout. Sometimes it moves like luck. But the true strategist knows, when luck favors someone else repeatedly, it's not luck, it's espionage. And someone who shows up too often is somewhere they shouldn't be. Sign 14, the relief after the strike not taken. The traitor's body knows more than his mouth. And sometimes, even if the betrayal doesn't happen, the body confesses. There's a subtle moment, imperceptible to the naive, when the betrayal almost takes place, but doesn't. How do you know? By the relief that follows the missed opportunity, when the conversation ends, and he exhales deeply, when the subject changes, and his shoulders relax, when you speak, and he stays silent for just a bit too long. It's not boredom, it's discharge, because he almost did it. He almost spoke, almost acted, almost revealed himself, but he didn't. And now, his body celebrates the inaction, like someone who postponed an execution. I saw it once in a Florentine council meeting. We discussed a matter that divided the city. One man was quiet, composed, precise. But when the meeting ended, his back collapsed, his hands opened, as if he had just dropped something invisible. I saw it. It wasn't tension. It was release. Later I learned he'd been instructed to denounce me, but didn't that day. Yet I already knew, because the body spoke. The relief after the strike not taken is the silent confession of someone who already considered you the enemy. Maybe he stopped. Maybe he regretted it. Or maybe he's just waiting for the next attempt. Either way, the strategist doesn't wait to be betrayed. He acts at the sound of the sigh, as if the blade had already fallen.
If you've made it this far, you're no longer the same, because now you know the 14 signs. And now when someone tries to approach you with praise, with silence, with coincidences, you won't see words, you'll see patterns. And when the next betrayal comes, because it will, you won't be caught surprised, you won't be wounded, you'll be ready. Some people live in reaction, others learn to anticipate. The difference isn't luck, it's training. If this knowledge served you, don't let it fade. Because here, we don't make entertainment, we make strategy. Turn on notifications, because next time won't be a sign. It will be a real move. And when that happens, you better already be looking with invisible eyes. See you next time, if you're still in the game.